Hey guys, Adam Rose, Vice President and Senior Loan Officer of Western Ohio Mortgage here in Sydney, Ohio. This is another episode of the Mortgage Guy Podcast, and this week we're going to learn about the NAR settlement. And again, I have Teresa Rose, the President of Western Ohio Mortgage, on the show.
Can't stay away because there's so much to
This is
talk
the
about.
third or fourth time I think she's been on, so you should be a regular by now. But we want to hit on this because we just got back from the Mortgage Collaborative. Mortgage Collaborative, the TMC conference. And this was kind of a hot topic that everybody was talking about. Some lenders feels like this is a great opportunity for them. I don't know why. We did not feel that way. No. I guess they're not very relationship-based like we are.
Right.
We heavily rely on our referral partners to get business and to advise them. They advise us what's going on in the market. So we like that collaborative that we have locally in our markets. Apparently, other large lenders feel differently.
Maybe.
So let's talk about this. So first off, what is it? So NAR settled, all right? So in the settlement, and we've talked about the lawsuit before, to kind of give you a broad brushstroke of what's going on with sellers weren't supposed to be paying the buyer's agent, or they didn't know, and there's a certain percentage and all this garbage. You can refer back to our past podcasts. Justin will put a link in there so you can check it out. But in a nutshell, recently they settled, and they settled for over $400 million, right? Paid out over 4 years, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, not only are they paying all this money that's going to come out of the pockets of the agents that pay for their dues. Whoops, I don't have a way to silence that. So you're going to have to deal with that sound of my phone ringing. Anyways, not only is that happening, but they made concessions as well. And there's two concessions that we want to focus in on, right? Concession 1, they can no longer advertise the compensation in the multiple listing service for a buyer's agent, right? They can no longer advertise that they are going to pay a buyer's agent. So a lot of things can happen off this. First one I want to talk about is the cost to buyers. What do you think about that?
Well, first, let's back up just a smidge because I for the general public, real estate agents already know this, but for the general public, there is a value that is already baked into the sales price cake.
Yeah,
of
price
representation from a real estate agent, right? So when you're hearing people say, well, this lawsuit is because we didn't want the seller to automatically have to pay a buyer's agent. The truth is, and good real estate agents know this, the price that the seller got was highly driven by the fact that it was being sold by a professional. Otherwise, you would do for sale by owner.
Right.
Statistically, for sale by owner homes, go for less. So the idea or concept that the seller was really paying
it's been baked into the cake for the last 80 years.
Always been baked into the appraisal cake. And so all the comparables that we have out there right now already have that commission kind of baked in. Mm-hmm. And theories were, now we're going to see a reduction in sales prices.
Yeah,
and we all know better.
So let's talk about that. Let's hit that piece first before we talk cost to buyer. So now if a bunch of sellers get together and they say, nope, not paying a buyer's agent, it's just not going to happen. And you have listing agents that come up and say, well, I'll list your house for 3%. We won't pay that buyer's agent. So my question to the general public and agents out there, especially listing agents, is since the 6% commission has been built into or baked into the cake.
Approximately 6.
Right? Yeah. It can vary,
it averages
of course.
around 5.
It's not just a given.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But nonetheless, it's been baked into these appraised values over all this time. So are they going to say, all right, I'm going to do your market analysis, and I found that the comp support, we should list your house for $200,000. Well, if they're not going to pay a buyer's agent anymore, are they going to drop it by 3% and list it for $194,000? I think not.
Yes, that's highly unlikely.
Think not.
Highly unlikely. So even though the suit alleges that it's going to save buyers money because they will get the property for less.
This is my show. I want to cuss on it so bad right now.
Highly unlikely. That's not happening.
Total BS.
That's not happening.
No way.
So the important thing that we have to take from it is that buyers, anyone who's out there considering buying real estate, it is really important that you have representation because this is the biggest financial transaction you're ever going to have in your entire life, and you should not go in unrepresented. It would be like going to court and facing trial, being on trial without an attorney and representing yourself. It's equivalent to that because you don't understand all of the financial obligations. You don't understand necessarily property condition, deed restrictions, anything that might be in the baked in the property pie. You don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're going in for the first time, you don't have representation, you could easily be taken advantage on the seller's side to their advantage.
Right.
And then you end up with a property that is either substandard, you didn't have proper inspections on it, maybe you paid too much for it, just lots of things that could go sideways.
So dual agency, that's been brought up, right? So here's the question. So if let's say you go in unrepresented because the seller's not willing to pay your buyer's agents, one of two things happens. You can have representation. You may have to pay for yourself. Are you in a position to do that? Because we've gotten that question a lot where it's like, well, can't we just finance it in? No, you cannot. You cannot finance it in. I'm sure there's a lot of places out there, and government agencies might be looking at this to see if there's a way to fix it, but that is not available. Okay?
And my theory on that, I personally think it would be a mistake for agencies, which they're looking at, right?
Right, they're going to look at it.
For the agencies to say it's okay to finance it because they, as we know, that within that price, the amount of money that historically real estate agents have been paid has been baked in. So now if they go on top of that and say, oh, and on top of that, we're going to add another 3% for you to finance agent fees, I think that would be misguided.
We're kicking values even higher.
That's correct. I don't see that that's a thing. Now, let's not mistake that with concessions, right? Because sellers on certain products can make concessions and say, hey, we'll pay up to 6% of your closing costs, buyer's agent, prepaids, whatever it might be. The people that get left out, though, in that equation are veterans, because there is no provision currently in VA that allows a veteran to pay for real estate representation, period. So that will probably be the one agency that will need to come out and comment soon on how they're going to address this. Because as we're saying, we are proponents of representation for buyers. It's a mistake to go in unrepresented and not make sure that somebody's looking out for your interests when you are making, as we said, the largest financial transaction of your life.
Right.
So.
Right, and on the flip side, again, back to the dual agency piece, if someone had a listing, it was a 5% list price or a 6% list price, they welcomed it because they were getting both sides of this transaction, so they're going to do their best to represent you. But again, dual agency is a challenge, right? They can't represent your best interest for the buyer and the seller at the same time because they have certain information, right? So it's not a diss on any dual agents out there that have happened. It's going to happen, but at the same time, it's not always in the best interest of the client. So let's say we have one of those situations, and the listing agent says, all right, we're going to list it for 3%. We're not going to pay your buyer's agent. They're going to have to negotiate that in. So buyer's like, sorry, buyer's agent, I can't pay you. I have no way to pay you. I can barely do what I've got or deal with what I've got with the down payment and closing. So I'm going in unrepresented. So now we have a dual agency situation. Now, this is more towards the listing agents, right, on this piece. So if you have a seller that's not willing to help out and pay a buyer's agent, are you going to step up and show the house 40 or 50 times when all these buyers come up unrepresented and you have to show it and do double and triple the work and for less compensation? So that's a conversation I assume should be had with your seller,
which is the whole reason that the seller is not doing for sale by owner.
Correct.
They don't want to have to arrange the showings, schedule all the showings, show the property, do any of the negotiating. That's why real estate is a service industry. You are paying for a service. If you want the service and you want the best representation you can get, you have to pay for it. It is not free.
The types of offers might be different if they come in unrepresented.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can happen. There's some buyers out there that are so loyal to their buyer's agent. Maybe they've been looking for years. And they're like, there's no way I'm cutting them out. And so they don't even look at the property. So are you getting the best offers as a seller? There's so many little avenues this can go down. It's crazy. And we've already kind of touched on costs to the buyer. So I don't know.
I see very few buyers that are in a position to pay for representation unless it's their second or third transaction.
Right,
they're selling their house.
Got some equity build up.
Yeah, they got a little bit of cash. The vast majority of first-time buyers are doing everything they can to come up with the down payment, because they're paying rent, and rents are already
outrageous,
crazy high. So they're doing the best they can to try to come up with the absolute minimum amount of cash they have to do the transaction. So then to be asked to pay the buyer's agent, and keep in mind, everyone, that they did add that you've got to sign, if you're going to have buyer representation,
buyer broker agreements.
Yeah, you got to sign a buyer broker agreement. And the thing for those of you listening who are buyers, you need to read it carefully because you don't know if you're going to be represented for a day, a month, a year, forever.
This was a topic of conversation at the TMC, at the Mortgage Collaborative, was how do these work? Each state was a little bit different. We were talking to somebody out of Texas, and they said once the buyer signs their buyer-broker agreement, they can't opt out, meaning the agent has to let you out, and they don't have to. So if you guys have a conflict event, it doesn't matter, just a personality conflict even, or the agent's not available to show you homes at certain times when you're available, apparently it's not easy to get out of. Now, I'm not going to say that's the case here, because this is a practice that a lot of people used to do and still do at some point. But you probably need to take a look at it. Is it for this specific showing? Is it for 30 days? Is it a 6-month contract? You know, what's the out if we're not getting along, or the situation and you hate each other by the end of the first showing? You know, what's your out? So please do pay attention to that. I think that's extremely important to have a conversation with your buyer's agent about how to get in, how to get out, how long is it good for, and all that fun stuff.
Right. And and if you're a buyer out there, do not, if you're reading some things in the press or you're seeing things on TV about these new requirements, first of all, it's not settled yet. It's not official.
Correct.
It's not supposed to go into effect until July, and that's provided that they actually accept the settlement agreement. But as a buyer, do not shy away from contacting a real estate agent when you're ready to buy. Now, we prefer as lenders that you call us first, because you shouldn't be shopping for a house if you can't buy one. Yep. And many people, on a whim, they're driving down the street, they see a sign and, oh, I want to call about that house. And they've not talked to a lender, so they don't know if there's something in their credit profile, in their income, or anything else that's going to stop them. So we should be the first stop for sure. But we want to make sure that homeowners or potential homeowners understand they want to have representation. And the fact that they're saying, well, there's not automatically going to be paid for by the seller, that's negotiable. Right.
And there's going to be some interesting ways. Now, I don't know officially, and like if this thing gets ruled out and it goes into effect in July, what little workarounds some listing agents can do, whether it's in the comments saying agent friendly.
Right.
Something like that can tip off agents without them having to worry about contacting the agent, getting a response, and waiting for that to happen to schedule a showing. There might be little hints and things that you could probably put in there. Again, don't know. I assume you could probably do that, but legality purposes, you can't put in buyer, broker, or 3%, 2%, 1%, whatever it is.
There's also some conversation about something that actually some people are doing now, and that is that when you go to show the property, that the seller basically gives you a written agreement, or the listing agent does, that says that you have this one-day showing agreement. And within that agreement, it can also say whether or not the seller plans to participate in the buyer's compensation. So one thing that I will say is, and we know this from the mortgage industry. So the mortgage industry went through something similar in 2010 when the CFPB came into play and completely rewrote the rules about how loan officers are compensated and what the rules of the road are for financing. So we kind of went through it. And it is a bit of self-policing. And one thing that I believe, and we found out through our experience in the mortgage industry, is we're very resilient. We are always looking out for our clients. And as long as a real estate agent continues to be looking out for the best interests of their clients, they're going to succeed. They're going to find a way to make everybody get the representation they need, everybody receive the compensation that they deserve,
and get the best deal for the buyer,
and
still
keep it safe, because that's the big thing, is trying to keep a safe environment for consumers, which could go drastically wrong if this thing doesn't play out the way it should play out.
It really can. And going back to the dual agencies thing, there is a whole different realm of responsibility on that listing agent if they do something incorrectly as a dual agent. There's a lot more scrutiny put on those transactions when they send them in for audit or review. So something to be careful of, and that's something nobody wants.
Right.
Nobody wants. Everybody just wants to play along. Business as usual. That's what everybody's hoping for. But I've got news for you. There's going to be a couple of people out there that are going to take advantage of this situation and snag some listings.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw this
Educate those sellers.
I'm going to throw this out there too. You are going to see some dual employment going on where
cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah, where real estate agents.
I'm going to get a bunch of phone calls now. Here we go.
No, where real estate agents and loan officers are basically doing both roles. Now, here's the danger.
Do you want me to be a real estate agent?
Here's the thing.
Here come the recruiting calls.
Here's the danger, okay? If I list a piece of property, and so I already know, I've talked to my seller, here's how much I want for this house. I know I can get it, right?
Yep.
If I'm also a licensed loan officer and I now have all of the buyer's information, how am I able to represent the seller and the buyer when I already know how much money he has in the bank?
How much he can go.
how high he can go. I just see that that's a dynamic that just doesn't belong in the industry. It just doesn't. No. It's gonna happen. And I think there are companies that are already modeled that way, but I think it's problematic. You've got to make sure that whoever is doing that is as ethical as the day is long and has a way to keep that separated, because I just don't know how you do it and do the job well for both sides.
Yeah. That's a challenge. I mean, our industry, if this gets approved by the, which, you know what, there's a lot of talk where they don't think they're going to take it. They
might not take the settlement. Now that's not to say, I mean,
that the rule changes couldn't,
which could kick this, but it could kick that down the road, or it could be a situation that NAR says, listen, we want to voluntarily throw this out here. Then maybe, but because there are so many.
Don't say flat commission.
Okay, I won't say it.
They might regulate your commission.
But yeah, I mean, I think that with all the people that could still potentially be exposed to litigation, if there's not a settlement, when this first was announced, I really kind of felt, my personal opinion, I felt that NAR threw their agents under the bus. But then, after I had time to digest it and understand the ramifications, I think that I really do think they did it for the best interest of
the
their
settlement.
membership.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, and it's not even about the settlement anymore. All right, it's not even about the $400 million and trying to make changes. Agreed. These changes, no bueno for the industry, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. How they lost the suit is the bigger question.
I'm not sure who the attorneys were.
That's unbelievable. Like, I've talked about that before, and it pisses me off every time we talk about it, is how an attorney goes in there and says that the sellers have been damaged by agreeing to a certain percentage that they're willing to pay, and what the broker or the listing agent does with that money is irrelevant.
Well, the thing is, this was never seen in a federal court. This only happened in 2 states. It was in Missouri, was the Hallmark case. And
unbelievable.
There was a case in Illinois. But the fear is, and the logic tells us, that there would be copycat cases all over the country. Yeah. So it needed to be done on a national level and settled to nip it in the bud.
I know. I don't know who was representing NAR.
I don't either.
But you were all smoking something that day. I was going to say something else.
Yeah. No, don't.
I can't.
Keep it
politically
clean.
correct. Okay.
Yes.
But anyways, I mean, that's the point here. It boils down to that. Part of it is I don't know how they lost the suit. It's beyond me. You have to be an idiot to lose that suit. All the evidence is right there. Mm-hmm. I can't force you to agree. So if I come to you as a broker and I want to list your house and I say it's 6%, you're like, no. Okay, it's 5% now. No. 4%. How about I'll just sell it myself? You don't have to agree to pay me anything. You can sell it yourself. You can shop around. It can be 2%, 5, 6, 7, 10. Mm-hmm. Don't care. Mm-hmm. So how the fact...
The only thing
that's aggravating,
the only part of it, I think that what kind of shone through in the case was the fact that people claim that because the buyer's agent commission was marketed in the MLS, that buyer's agents were cherry picking the houses they were showing. Now, I find that a little hard to believe, but they're trying to say
there's some people out there though
that if you were offering a 2.5% buyer commission versus a 3%, I'm only going to show the one where I'm going to get 3%, and the one that was a 2.5%.
How you prove that?
I'm not showing. You can't. But as goes back to the mortgage industry, they tried to accuse the mortgage industry of the same thing, which we know that as ethical lenders, we weren't engaging in, and the vast majority of mortgage lenders were not engaging in.
We just want to get the deal. We don't get the deal done and get the best deal for the borrower. That's it. End of story. It's either you get the best deal for the borrower or you don't get the deal at all.
And people don't realize how many times their lender, not just us, but many lenders across the country, take concessions to try to get people in houses. They want they're an advocate for the homeowner. They want these people in the house.
You spend a lot of money in credits and getting people cash to close isn't there, and giving them a credit and cutting costs and doing all kinds of stuff to get these borrowers to the table.
That's
so we do what we can, and I hope I hope the listing agents and all the agents out there can continue business as normal, right? Please. Let's keep this rocking and moving forward. But that's it. Thank you, T, for coming on the show this week. Again, guys, subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and we'll bring you some more updates next week as this keeps progressing. We'll see you all next week.